So kia ora everybody and welcome to our TENS webinar for this month, which is Unleashing Creativity with Natural Resources. Called Sarah Washbrook, Talk Ingawa. My name is Sarah Washbrook and I am Himana Tuaurua. So I volunteer as Deputy Chair on the TENS Council. TENS is a technology subject association which helps and supports all educators, no matter their school or teaching level, in the area of technology education. Before we start today, we will say our karakia. Māori ora, kia a mātou, arahina mātou, kia mātou mahi, ki mihia he huarahi, o te kōpapa, mō taranga o pangarau, a whina atu, a whina mai, te pō e here, ni I a mātou, kuie, Haki. Kia ora, everyone. And like we said, welcome to today's session. I have the privilege of introducing our presenter today. So welcome, Celia, who is on the screen with me at the moment. So Celia is the founder of Little Kiwis Nature Play and is a nature education specialist, consultant, speaker, and resilience coach. She is passionate about connecting children to nature and is a strong advocate for nature play, risky play, and improving mental health and well-being through nature. For the past 25 years, she's worked for a variety of outdoor education organisations internationally, setting up and developing running outdoor programs, wilderness exhibitions, leadership development programs, and establishing risk management and safety systems. Celia splits her time between nature-based professional development training coaching, running her bush kindy and taking her own tamariki on lots of adventures. She is also co-chair of Education Outdoors New Zealand, chair of Nature Education Aotearoa, and is an advisor for EC reform. For those people, before we just go straight into the presentation, just so people know, this session is going to be recorded. And if you do have any questions for Celia, we will do a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Please just pop in your questions in the Q&A box, the chat box at the bottom, and we will be able to answer any questions that you have. And now, without further ado, I'll pass over to Celia, who will carry on the presentation for today.
Kia ora. Thank you so much, Sarah, for the lovely welcome. Kia ora, ko Celia tōku ingoa, no Otahi Aho, ki Little Kiwis Nature Play. I am based here in Otahi Christchurch, and I run a number of different things, as you heard. But today we are talking about one of my kind of passions, which is around bringing nature into what we do in our teaching teams. I often do a lot of workshops around nature education, but a big part of that is connecting with natural resources and how we can use those and make them come to life in our teaching environments wherever they are. So I'm just going to share my screen. Give me a moment. Okay. I'll put that into... There we go. Fantastic. Right. So today we're talking about unleashing creativity with natural resources. And I first wanted to start with a bit of a story. So a couple of years ago, I was with my tamariki, my own tamariki, over on the West Coast, and we were biking the wilderness, the wilderness trail, which, you know, there are lots of different sections, and we were doing different sections each day. So this one section was 16 kilometres, and we're biking along, and then suddenly, come to a stop, my daughter's bike, something had malfunctioned. And what we noticed was that just on the outside of the chain, the casing for the chain had kind of come off and was stuck between the chain and the pedal. And we were kind of sitting there going, well, we don't have any tools. We forgot some of the important tools that we needed. And I'd forgotten zip ties, which would have been really helpful to be able to tie that casing back on and allow her to bike. So at that stage, we were there thinking, gosh, we're actually going to have to walk this last 6 or 7 kilometres out to the other end. And then I just started thinking, a skill that I had learnt I could probably apply that here. And so the skill was making string out of natural fibers. So I had a need. I needed to tie that casing back on. I couldn't find any harakiki and I couldn't find any takoka. So that's cabbage leaves. But what I did find was a similar plant that I don't even know the name of, but it was long and thin, and the fibers they were okay. They weren't super strong, but I managed to plait. I did a plait, made some string out of it into this nice long length, and I was able to tie that back on. So you can see the string that I have there. I was just able to do that in about 10 to 15 minutes on the side of our track. I then, it looks a bit funny there, a bit scruffy, but I was able to tie that plastic casing to the bike, get it out of the way of the chain, and then off we went biking back out on the Wilderness Trail. And I guess, like it's just that really was a great moment for me. Like, not only did I feel like G.I. Jane, like I was bush lady extraordinaire, coming up with this, whipping out this rope in the middle of the forest, but it was just that whole process of going, oh my gosh, our ancestors, especially when we're thinking way, way, way back to hunter-gatherer kind of thing, they relied on nature to provide all the tools and resources to sustain themselves. And so, that's kind of what we're looking at today. What does nature provide us? What tools does it provide us? So when we think about technology, we're thinking about any tool that is used to fulfill a human need. And so that could be many different things. And that's what we're going to be exploring today. One thing I do want to talk about a little bit is just we are nature, we are part of nature. We're not just admirers standing on the sidelines. We have a unique part to play. And as I mentioned, our ancestors have survived in this environment, and they've had to use so much creativity and problem solve and make things work to be able to survive in that environment. So we actually still rely a lot on nature. And there's a great saying, it says, nature doesn't need us, but we need nature. And that's essentially saying nature will thrive no matter what. But as humans, if we don't have nature, we can't sustain ourselves. So our current society, we are a little bit disconnected, but what I am seeing is a resurgence into using these natural elements to help us with the needs that we have. So let's start by looking at the benefits of using natural resources creatively in our teaching. First up, I think experiential learning opportunities are fantastic. In nature, when we're hands-on, we're down in that, it's how a lot of students learn. When we're looking at the percentage of students that learn through audio, kinesthetic, or oh gosh, I'm having a mind blank. The other one. It's a really hands-on way. It helps us to get deep into that, and it really connects to our learning, and it gives us a deeper connection to te taiao. So when we are connected to nature, it helps us create a sense of belonging, and also developing that stewardship and responsibility for our environment, for nature. So we're thinking, like it also links into environmental education as well. The other great thing, and I mentioned before, it develops our curiosity. So being able to, when I was there on the side of the path over on the West Coast, I was kind of like, could I make something else even with a different fibre? I was curious and I investigated, and it was a really proud moment. I felt very cool doing that. So other benefits are that it stimulates our senses and creativity. Like when we are first born, we learn in the world through our senses. And as life goes on, we often focus on the sense of sight. So when we close our eyes and we feel something, it's got a completely different different information that's coming into our bodies versus if we're just looking at something. So having hands-on touch and engaging with our senses is fantastic. I also think that learning outdoors is a bit more enjoyable in many cases, and it can have a bigger impact. Often I use the example that if we were to run a class inside and exactly the same class outside, a majority of children would probably prefer to have that lesson outside. There's something just about nature that pulls us in. And I think we can get deeper learning when we're engaging outdoors in the natural environment. Right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to dive into some, we've looked at the benefits. We're going to look at some specific resources that nature provides, and specifically about 4 or 5 different natural or native plants that are commonly used and can be used for technology and also for just other uses. Rauronga Māori is a key use for harakeke, but today we're going to be looking at it from that technology side. So I've written down some of the things because I wanted to make sure I got everything right. So harakeke, it was absolutely a prized resource for Māori, and it was used in so many different ways. Woven garments incorporated harakeke into them, and it was often worn by a majority of people in their villages. The harakeke fibre was very well known for its strength, and ropes were used. It became a trade piece. Fishing lines and fishing nets were also used harakeke. Another list of things, Kite, so we have, these kind of baskets here, they were created. Fans, fly swats, belts, house panels and sails. So it was such a diverse resource with the ability to do almost anything. And this is probably one of the most well-known resources that we often think about when we're looking into nature. Now, the other great thing about harakeke is there are a couple of different pūrākau that we can share when we're talking about harakeke. So we're weaving in different elements of the curriculum as well, but we are still able to pull through, for example, Maui pulling up the North Island, and he made a rope to catch the North Island and hook it up and pull it up out to sea. So, that's a tool that he has used to do that. The other popular Maui story is the taming of the sun and using the harakeke rope to slow down the sun. So there, these stories have such significance, both around the strength of harakeke and how strong a fibre it is, but also around the significance of survival for Māori. Like if they didn't have that resource, it might have been a different life for them here in Aotearoa, because it helped them in so many different ways for their everyday living. So just using harakeke in front of our students is it will definitely stimulate a lot of kōrero. So in the picture there, we have 3 different things that are using harakeke. We have on the far left, there is a poi. And so because I do a lot of weaving myself, when you're pulling off the strips of harakeke that you're not using, I wanted to create some sustainability around that. And so we kind of bunch it up into a wee ball and make a poi out of it and attach some string that we've also made from harakeke. And so that has become a bit of a game that we play with our tamariki and our bush kindi. The basket, or it looks like a boat as well, down the bottom there, a little bit cut off. So that is a basket. So we have a lot of children who like to collect and gather. So we created a tool for the children to be able to go off and collect and gather. Equally so, we get a lot of outdoor play and family play at the different age ranges. And so this doll I learned from Omine, who is a great nature educator up in Auckland, and he started creating these, and it's just fantastic. We can have these out in nature, create them for the need of the children, the tamariki, And then if any of these items get lost or left behind, then they can absorb back into nature, which is fantastic. So this photo was a little bit out of focus, but kites with another thing that Māori used to create. They didn't often use harakiki. They did use raupo a lot, but we did this at our bushkindi because the children wanted to make a kite for matariki. And so this is how they decided to do that. We can also make different other elements. So these are manu, birds that can be used as part of rituals. There's putty for gifting. So just a lot of variety of ways that we can use our harakiki. Right, now let's look at te koka or cabbage leaves. So this one is a great one to find uses for because often there are a lot of leaves left on the ground underneath cabbage trees, and they're not very good for the lawnmower. So it's great to have another use. Yes, they're great in the fire, but they also used to be used for a lot of weaving back in the day. Not so much these days, but I think that is, a bit more weaving is being seen with the te koka now. They used to make snares made from te koka leaves because they were quite durable and they kept their shape well. So the one thing about te koka is when it gets wet, it doesn't shrink. So it's quite a great fibre in that way. When I'm using te koka, having it a little bit damp makes it a lot easier to use and manipulate as well. So fishing nets were also made out of te koka, and also harakiki was used to strengthen those nets. Oh no, sorry, it was the other way around. I think it was harakiki was used to make the fishing nets, and then te koka was used to strengthen some of the links through. So fishing nets. They used to make kawe, which is like back straps. So when they'd have to make a backpack, they would use that as a tool for carrying heavy loads on their back. So it was often plaited from te koka. They would make sandals for their feet. These were made from te koka, and it was a very useful item when they were travelling across the islands in search of mahinga kai and other valuable resources. So it's a great resourceful plant, and in this one this photo you can see that we've made a basket, a little quick carry basket out of te koka this time. So you saw the one in harakiki in the last image, and this one is made out of te koka. Again, I've shown this photo here because the inner part of this is te koka as well as cabbage leaf. Awesome. We're now going to have a look at raupo. So raupo, these are like bush reeds. So they often grow on the side of rivers and in wetland areas. It's an amazing resource. When you look at it end on end, it kind of looks like little bubbles all the way through. So it's kind of spongy. It's nice and soft. So it can be a little bit floaty. And so Māori would use this raupo along with the rako from a harakiki. So rako, the sticks, the stems, the flower stems from a harakiki, bunch them all together and make different pontoons as crafts to be able to row across large rivers like the Waimakariri or something like that. That's my local river. So these were amazing. They were quite a convenient resource because there was lots of them. And the name for this raft, that you can see in the image there, in fact, I've actually got it here. I might even show that later when I don't have the thing on. But that is called mokihi. That is the Māori name for that raft. So it was great making a mini one and just recognising how much raupo was required even just to make that small amount there. So it would have been an abundant resource that they had. It's also worth noting that for ocean-going waka, the fluffy seed heads of the raupo would be used to kind of put in, gosh, I'm getting tired with my words today, put in any cracks that were existing in the waka, which were often made out of different trees. So it's yeah, it's a great resource. As I mentioned earlier, these are also used as kites for play, for takaro, for children. They could be used as a simple shelter as well. They were really good for makeshift shelters on the way traveling. You could also make poi. So raupo was a traditional resource used for making poi here for Māori, using the dried leaves. And the pith from the seed head was often used to wrap around. And I've actually got one here, which I'll show again later, but it's just the traditional poi made out of raupo. Next, we're talking about Supplejack. So if you have come across Supplejack, it's quite a fun vine that you will find in many forests around Aotearoa. You can hang on it, you can swing on it, but it's kind of easily manipulatable as a resource. So the Māori name for it was perita or kareo. I think I have pronounced that second terminology wrong, but it's Kareao. So it is said that the Supplejack grew from the tail of the eel god, which is Tunaroa. So Tunaroa, the story goes that he had a run-in with Maui's wife, and said some obscenities to her, and so Maui came and kind of hacked Tunaroa to pieces, and throwing the head into the sea, which gave ocean eels, and then the other body parts into the river, to the awa, which gave us water, our river eels. But then the tail of Tunaroa rooted itself into the ground, and that is how Supplejack grew. So it's a lovely wee pūrākau if you're going to be using Supplejack. Now, it was also used to create eel traps, as it was quite tough and pliable, and it would hold eels in there. It was excellent for basket making. After colonial times, sheep hurdles, and also binding fences together. Canoes and platforms, anything that needed binding together was a great resource. It could also be hollowed out and made into a musical instrument, which is really cool. And I didn't know that until I was researching for this. So this here is a Supplejack kind of sphere, and in traditional takaro, traditional play for Māori, this was one of the elements that they used to, or artifacts that they used to engage with. Again, a little bit of a blurry photo, but you can kind of get the size that they could be. We've also made some kind of smaller ones, and we've made other games out of Supplejack because it's such a versatile material. I just want to play this quick wee video here, and this just gives you a wee example of a game. Think of Twister. You used to play Twister at birthday parties when you're a kid, or your children are still doing that. This game is kind of like you throw some larger circles made out of Supplejack and some smaller ones, and your feet can go on the big ones and your hands go on the smaller ones, and you have to get from one side to the other. So it's kind of a version of that. So I'll just play this for you. Sorry, no sound. Oh, wait, there is sound. Yeah, so it's just something fun. This was a group of educators that I had, and we just played like this for quite some time, everyone trying their own strategy to be able to get to the other side. And just thinking about that, this is a great one for kids as well. So you can do it however you like, that's just one way. And I think what the whole creativity piece is around engaging in nature is you can create it in any way, shape, or form. Just because I've shared this one way doesn't mean that that's how that has to go. You can create a new game, or tamariki can create something different out of that. Right, so I wanted to include this. I haven't actually used this element. It's mostly grows in the North Island, but Mangy Mangi, some of you may have heard of that before, but it's also a resource that was used because it's quite manipulatable for making different fishing baskets or eel nets. It's a kind of thin, wiry plant. Some of you will be familiar with it. It has thin leaves and it's mainly found up in the north of the North Island. It's a lot stronger than it appears. It looks quite stringy, but I was also reading that it kind of, when it's bunched together, it can be like a coil, and so it was used as bushman's mattress. So people would gather up the mangy mangy and they would place that down and sleep on that. So I thought that was quite interesting, so that's some technology going on there. Hinaka traps for eels, so that I've mentioned that, and anything that needed to be tied or bound. So the difference between this and the supplejack can often be quite a bit thicker, so binding large things was easier, but this was really good for binding things together that were a bit smaller, a bit thinner. So really cool there. I don't have any other photos of that. I got that off the internet, but just looking at that, it looks pretty amazing. You can also see that I've got some other resources in there. There might be, I'm not sure what that is, but it could even be some supplejack in there creating the frame of that net. Right now, this elderflower is obviously not a native plant, but I just wanted to tell you this wee story from our bush school that we ran. And what's going on here is the tamariki had, I think, an elderflower plant had been, or tree had been pruned, and there were some lengths of stick, and the children were like, can we do something with them? Sure. So they started sawing them up into these little rounds, and I think I have some here. And so these little rounds, that was great. And then someone realized that the middle piece was really soft. So they got out their whittling knives and they just started carving into the middle of these pieces of elderflower wood. And what they did was they would end up with a wee hole, and they started threading them and making these lovely wee necklaces. This is the one that my daughter made. And so that just literally came from them. They were like, well, we want to make something out of this. They didn't know necessarily what they were going to make at the start, but they just explored and they managed to create their own necklaces. And this became a term-long process where they were just constantly making themselves and others these pieces. Sometimes they'd turn them into bracelets or put them on a headpiece. So it was just great seeing that creativity that was coming out for our tamariki. Now, this isn't specific about a certain type of resource, but this is just talking about what happens when children are left to engage in nature and lead their own play. They get creative and they want to make things. Here, the tamariki had decided that they needed a ladder to build to help them to get up this tree. And so these three boys here planned out how they would make their ladder. They went and found the resources, and they were having a go at figuring out how they could put that all together and how it works. So they're using some technology there, and they're creating their own new piece there to meet the need of climbing up a different tree. So construction is a fantastic way of using our natural resources as well. I mentioned earlier about our hunter-gatherer societies. So, hunting has always been a big theme in some of our bush school sessions. Making bow and arrows is a really interesting thing for them to understand, how thick the branch has to be before it's too thick to be able to bend. What's too thin? If it's too thin, then you don't get the arrow firing enough. And what about the arrow itself? How to actually whittle the end off, and how does it go in a straight line? And finding the straightest piece of, we were using hazelnut for this, hazelnut to be able to fly as straight as possible, and then sometimes whittling along the sides to allow for a little bit more streamline. So I think it's really incredible just what the children come up with. And often when I'm working outdoors, we're letting the children, come up with their own ideas through the play that they're engaging with. So with this one, this again was something that carried on for quite a long time. But what we saw the children starting to kind of process, going, oh, well, we've seen some arrows in other places. They're pulling in information from elsewhere, and they had like feathers or things on the end. So scoured the ground for feathers, didn't find any. But what they did decide was, well, let's try leaves. Let's cut these leaves into the shape of what the feathers look like, and let's see if this holds or this helps our arrows go straighter. I can tell you it didn't. In fact, often the leaves would just fly off the end because they didn't have the long bit that a feather has. But it was still as great exploring that and how, why feathers were used, because they actually would be able to stay there and help. So yeah, really interesting observation there from our children. Right, let's have a think about some of the other possibilities that nature offers. So, nature itself is just so rich in colour, texture, patterns, and smells. And often when we're going outdoors, like I said, as adults, we're focusing mostly with our eyes, with our sight. Yet children have this innate ability to really connect with an outdoor environment through all their senses. So yes, there's the technology, but it's just also that sensory development and understanding of the environment. Even bark, natural resources, offer a wealth for design. I've got a piece of bark here that one of my children started trying to carve out the middle to make a bowl so that they could play with their dolls outside. So it's, like just if you have natural elements and resources around, children will create what they need and they will become a tool. So it's really cool. Connection into different cultures, like I said with the hunting, that's connecting into past times, different cultures, but also just thinking about Māori and how Māori engaged in our Aotearoa when they first arrived here. There are a lot of stories that connect into that too. For example, when I'm working with educators in Christchurch, I do some work with Eons, which I chair for their board, and we often have teachers coming and we're talking about our local places and really connecting to the stories in those local places. So here for Otatai Christchurch, we can connect into the stories of how Māori would come up the Avon Otakaro River on their waka to come and gather kai, and the children would play on the side of the river, which is Otakaro, means the place of play, and that's beside the river. So while the adults were gathering their kai, the children were playing. And also connecting into the stories of how they would catch their tuna. So tuna was quite a resource up the Avon Otakaro River, and so with one group we talked about that story, and then some of them were quite interested in, okay, well let's try and make a net and see how strong that is and what resources we can use and where we are now. And so we made this kind of eel net and had to think about, okay, well, you've got this net, it's about this big, but how do you feed the eels in? And so Māori used to put all these battens in the river to feed the eels into the net. So we're able to explore some of the story and the history and the culture of our place through the technology that was used, which is really cool. Just having a variety of different elements, leaves, rocks, seashells, sticks, whatever it is just fantastic for allowing the possibilities and the creativity to evolve. I've talked about hands-on learning, but we can also apply this technology into our gardening and exploring our ecosystems or studying animal habitats and that kind of thing. In the photo just to the side there, we have, just to give you an example of a tool that we've created, is paintbrushes. So at our bush kindy, we have a really strong philosophy of if a child comes to us wanting something or wanting to do something, our first question is, how can we make that out of what nature provides? So it's quite a shift from, oh, we'll just go and buy that from the $2 shop, or, we'll just quickly grab one of those things. It's like, well, what can we use in nature to create that? Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't, and that's fine. But when we can, we do. And that is part of our process. So here they wanted to do some painting. So we had these big wooden round things, and the tamariki were like, well, we want to paint. They didn't need colours. They were just super happy to make some paintbrushes with all different textures. And then we literally got some dirt and some water, put the dirt in the water, mixed it around, and they made paintings initially with that dirt. Then that can lead on to, okay, well, how can we create dye, and what plants in the natural world provide us with a variety of different colours for dye. So there's lots going on there that we can explore through nature and what it offers. Right, practical examples. I'm glad I had that slide there. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. I'm going to stop sharing just for a moment, and then I would suggest, if whatever view you've got, if you change to speaker view, hopefully that will come up to me, and then I'm just going to show you some of these different elements that we've created. So here, this is the manu that we created, and so some people go, oh, well, what can we use this for? So Hako Brown first introduced me to these. He's fantastic for all the weaving and stuff. And he would have these beautiful rituals when he was working with groups, where he would tie it on to the end of some kind of stick, normally a harakiki stem, and kind of weave it in and bring it in and out of the stories. And so it was just the beautiful way of connecting in with nature there. These are kind of small balls made out of harakiki. They're nice and light. They are great even for babies as just a loose part resource, because once they have dried, they lose the property of being a diuretic. So these are a great play element for tamariki. It can become a ball, it can become something that gets kicked or thrown or bowled, whatever. So a variety of different elements there. I showed you this, which was the poi, the traditional poi made out of raupo. And I can show you another poi that we started making a few years ago, made out of harakiki. It's literally just a ball. Now, people often say, well, how do you make this? I just am tying bits of harakiki together and wrapping it around itself. And then you can either do a plait, depending on the skill level, or you can make some rope with a different technique. Now, as I'm talking about this, some people are going, oh, well, I work with ECE children. So for me, when we're looking at young children, ECE, I'm looking at, okay, well, it's about role modeling. So often when I am with a group, not always, but often, I will just harvest some harakiki and I will just be there making something with the tamariki around. What they do is they see me using the resources and they observe. And sometimes they come over and I have, where is it? I've got a lot of different resources on here. And I think my kitten took the thing that I was looking for. Anyway, I'll use this as an example. Oh, no, I found it. So I was doing some weaving and my daughter came over. I think I might have actually been making one of those dolls. So where's my wee doll? I've got my wee doll here. So imagine I'm here making this doll. And then my daughter comes over, sees what I'm doing, and she decides that she's going to make her doll as well. So she gets up some of the fibers that are sitting around. She's got some harakiki and she got a piece of stick. And what she's done is she's just wrapped it round and then she held it up and she goes, Mummy, look at my doll. Isn't it awesome? And so that is the starting place for this creativity and the use of natural elements in that creative process. So this was my version of doll and this was hers. And that's what we want to get to, is there's no right or wrong. It's just being creative with that, what it means for her. And being that she was preschool at that age, this is brilliant. That's amazing. She's engaging with the resource and she can see the possibilities. And yeah, so as children get older, then the skills their handwork will become stronger. For example, some of the children wanted to make headpieces, and so we thought it was a bit too hard to teach them how to make the actual string, but we knew that they could plait. So we demonstrated and they experimented with how to plait harakeke, and then we can make a headpiece. And so we have a variety of different ones, and sometimes they become little crowns and have flowers in them or whatever they've found when they've taken their basket out to collect some flowers to put in their headpiece. So it's just that using it in different ways. What else can I show you? I'll just show you a couple of last things. So here we've got some of these Supplejack rings. Come out this way. So I just have like a few of them that we use for different games. You could have throwing games. You could try and catch it on a stick. You could do whatever you like. It's fantastic. Yeah, and baskets, fantastic. Great for holding some of these resources as well. Something I did yesterday, this all might seem a bit random, but we had corn for dinner, and so I've just taken off the corn and I'm just drying the husks, and the tamariki might want to make something with it. We've made corn husk dolls before, but they might come up with something else. So it's just about thinking, there are so many different possibilities if we let our minds wander and be free. Awesome. Right, I'm going to quickly share my screen one more time. Oh, of course, it goes all the way back to the start. So let's get to where we were. Awesome. So now we are wanting to look at, how we can, all my little things covering it, I can't even read what I've written there, but, considering our natural resources in our teaching settings. So I've talked about role modelling, really important to be role modelling this. So having provocations and discovery tables in your, in your classroom environments. But it's even going further than that. So you're having those natural resources inside and discovery tables, but it's also, what have you got outside? What resources are in your outdoor classroom that children can engage with? We've talked about pūrākau, so the stories that you tell and that you weave in, and also having real world experiences. So making sure that they're getting lots of different hands-on experiences that they may or may not get, in other environments. One example, and this is not specific for technology, but here in Christchurch, we live quite close to the beach. There are children who live and go to school a kilometre from the beach and they've never been there before. So we need to also be thinking about those kind of things. Sometimes these children haven't been able to engage in the natural environment in the way that we may have experienced. So bringing some of these resources in is a fantastic way to think about that. Now, I gave you an example about early childhood, so role modelling is really key. And as tamariki ākonga get older, there's lots of other different things that we can do with them. I have some of the high school teachers that I've taken on workshops, they have come away going, oh my gosh, we're going on our outdoor education camp this year, and we're gonna make our own backpacks this year, and we're going to make our own spoons and eating utensils, and we're going to use those for our day walk that we're going to be doing. I'm like, how awesome is that? So it's just thinking differently around, what we're doing and linking it into other places. Oh, I wonder, actually, I'll tell you one other story while I've got it on my mind. So I showed you this earlier, and this mokihi, I took it into my son's classroom as they were talking about, I don't know, they were talking about the local stories, and I was like, well, I'll take this in and just show that to the class so that they can see. I didn't tell the teacher, I just kind of took it in first thing in the morning and just put it there and showed a couple of students. The teacher came in and he was like, oh, can you leave that here for today? So I left it there. And what happened that day, the tamariki was so engrossed with this resource and what it could do that they got so inspired, and the whole day the tamariki ended up learning about harakiki and how to harvest it, and they went off and they got some harakiki and some other natural resources, and they spent the day designing their own rafts and boats and making them to then see if they floated on the local awa. And I was like, how cool is that, and how flexible is that teaching to be able to go, actually, we're just going to let this happen today. We're going to put that aside because this has really just taken our class. They are so into this. And that's what learning's about. So being able to lean into that interest and those urges that the children have and following that lead. And it was a fantastic project that they ended up developing even more over a period of time. Awesome. Now, often, like I've talked about a number of different examples, but I also just thought I'm going to just rack my mind and come up with everything and anything that I could. And so I came up with this here. Now, this is just a whole list of ideas that you could do in nature that kind of involve some form of technology for whatever purpose. So, making an obstacle course of loose parts, in play space. So there's a purpose for play. Building a sundial out of natural resources, making natural paintbrushes, basket making, building a solar oven to cook kai, making a dance based on nature, e.g. a falling leaf, build a mini greenhouse using plastic bottles, making compost bin, biodiversity scavenger hunt, designing and constructing a bird nest. There's just a variety of different things that hopefully can get you inspired and thinking of the possibilities and the potential that nature offers us. I guess my question for you, and I'd love you to put it into the chat, is what possibilities are you seeing in your own teaching now after this kōrero? I'd love you to just put some stuff in the chat there. What possibilities are you seeing for your own teaching when we're
You'll have to
thinking
pop
about
it into the
nature?
Q&A.
I'll pop it into the Q&A.
Put it into the Q&A and we can have a look at it.
Pop it into the Q&A. Because I think it's just about stimulating that thinking and that creativity. Right, so pretty much that's where I finished my wee kōrero around how we can be creative with natural resources and in the natural environment. Hopefully you feel like, gosh, there are possibilities for me, and there's some ideas that have come through. We've talked about those different resources. So yeah, I wish you well. I'm just going to share a little bit about me, where you can connect with me if you'd like anything further. So I'm on email. I have Facebook. Nature Educators NZ is a private group for just nature educators and teachers here in New Zealand. I'm also on LinkedIn and Instagram. At the moment, I have a Nature Educators weekend workshop happening up in Cambridge, and that will be happening over the weekend. I think it's the 6th and 7th of April. So if you're wanting to do some hands-on stuff like this, or you're wanting to help with your outdoor classroom and developing a nature play course or program within your school or your early childhood centre, please get in touch. Thank you.
Oh, kia ora, Celia, and wow, what an inspirational webinar. I mean, I've been in technology education for quite a few years, but I'm really inspired actually now, not just to do this
Oh,
like with children in the classroom, but even my teenagers, get them out actually
yeah.
doing things because yeah, the amount of sticks and rocks that my youngest brings home on walks is unbelievable. My garden is
Yeah.
covered in them, which is awesome. Just while we're talking, if anybody has any further questions of Celia before we go, please pop the questions into the Q&A box now, and we will attempt to answer any questions that you have. And I must say, from just looking at your presentation from a technology education perspective, so many links. I mean, it was you've got authentic context, you're looking at material properties, you're looking at, in fact, something really interesting is we've been looking and exploring the new NCEA standards for
Yeah.
level 1, and the materials and processing standard is all about experimentation of materials. And developing new technological outcomes through the experimentation and exploration of material properties. And so, yeah, so you can see this isn't just about young students. This is for everybody to take part in and enjoy and use, which is amazing.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, thank you for this presentation. We've got a few Q&As coming in. We have actually got a few people who have come up with some really great comments because you asked for suggestions. So
Yeah.
Matt says create Supplejack hoops instead of using plastic ones. So and then maybe have a natural resource tray and keep adding to it to make those Haki dolls. So that's a great idea. And Donna said making insect houses and kites. I know many schools have like a mini beast project or context
Yeah.
coming through. So yeah, definitely, which is a fantastic idea. What else have we got here? It looks like you've definitely inspired some people to have a go at plaiting and making the headbands. I think with your demonstration that you've got at the moment, I think there's
Yeah.
quite a few
Yeah. I
people
haven't taken it off. It's kind of nice, isn't it?
They're quite interested with that one. And yeah, and making kites as well, which is fantastic. Um, yeah, so we've got lots and lots of ideas and suggestions that people are coming up with. And people want to make the dolls too, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And what's this one? Celine was saying that at their school, they're focusing on local curriculum. They've got a local homestead that is a rich history of ancestral tipuna that have a peaceful, ongoing treaty. Through the stories and visiting the homestead, we will explore the resources you need to make bow and arrows. For example, using their local environment materials like Irish tree and
Yes.
English trees for traditional resources used in their community. Yeah,
Yay.
yeah, so
That's
fantastic. Look at
exciting.
the inspiration there. So no actual questions, but lots of people who are very, very inspired by your session today and actually wanting to take it further. And yeah, what I really like is people who probably don't really, they've learned about nature play and using natural materials and getting hands-on, but don't really realize there's so many links to technology as well with this, by getting the students to be creative, be problem solvers, and yeah, even going
Yeah.
through that design process where if they fail,
Yes.
like you're saying, the leaves didn't quite work on the arrowhead
Yeah.
before,
Yeah.
they're trying to find other solutions to the problems as well. So they're
Yeah.
actually going through that design modeling and thinking process.
Mm. And something we do at home is, and this can be incorporated into that, is I talk to my kids, I'll say once a week or something, hey, how have you failed this week? And so it's about celebrating failure so that we are creating that thing of failure. It's not a bad thing. It helps
Yeah.
us grow, it helps us learn. And I think that's really important. Like, 'cause I'm getting on my resilience bandwagon here now, but like
Yeah.
it's also looking about building resilience, and failure is really important for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Just while we're talking, would you mind just sharing your last slide again? Someone's trying to find you on Instagram, it looks like, and they haven't found you yet. So if we just
Oh, I wonder. Oh,
Mhm.
maybe my Instagram is Nature Educators NZ.
Okay.
Try that. Nature
Oh yeah,
Educators
someone's popped it
NZ.
into the chat. Yeah, it is. It's Nature Educators Undead. Someone's done it
I
for you.
can't
Bless
say I'm
her.
super active. I have a love-hate relationship with social media. I try. I try my best,
I just
but I
have
do try.
one question. Obviously, using
Yeah.
lots of natural materials, especially Harakiki, there is tikanga involved with that. And so
Yes,
what do
thank
we
you.
need to do as educators to make sure that obviously we are including and weaving in all aspects of Te Ao Māori into our teaching and making our
Yeah.
students aware of that?
Yeah. So from a tikanga perspective, different iwi will have different tikanga, and that's I have learnt that going around New Zealand that there's different ways of doing things, and so I think it's good to connect into your local iwi and understand what that tikanga is in your area. As well, there's kind of some generic ones. I think on land care research, they might have some videos that they do around harakiki tikanga, around how to harvest it, and what you should be thinking about when you're using harakiki. So definitely, and I should have said that in the precursor. So sorry about that, everyone. But thank you, great question. That is, really important if you are in a school and even asking into your community, hey, is there anyone who has knowledge and skills in this area that can come and help us? Like I think sometimes watching a video is great, but when you're there hands-on, I'm talking about that hands-on learning again, you're just going to get a better understanding, and you're going to get some feedback on what you're doing, and especially around harvesting it. I think that's important.
Fantastic, thank you. And we do have another question: are any of the resources that you've mentioned scarce?
Harakiki, no. Raupo, it can be hard to find, and so but you do see it in large groups, so it's not like it's going extinct or anything. Te Koka, completely everywhere. Like that's a resource we use so often because it is so abundant. The thing with harakiki is like, even just general tikanga, you're not going to walk into your local park and just start hacking at a bush, like we need to be seeking permission or finding places where we do have the ability to do that, or asking whānau if they do have, some harakiki bushes which are abundant and that are doing well. With the Supplejack, it varies around different parts of New Zealand. It comes in found in native forest. So, sometimes you have to walk for a bit, and some forests don't have much, and others are completely abundant with it. So that's also about you getting out and getting to know your local places and spaces and finding out what they have. And like I said on that wilderness trip, it didn't have some of the resources that I use over here in Christchurch and Otatahi. So it's about thinking outside the box. Just because I've shared these resources doesn't mean that they're the only ones you can use. Look at what your place, your spaces offer, and find uses for those.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone's responded to the harakiki that you've actually got interesting people wanting to learn how to weave harakiki as well. And actually, just to respond to that, to help and support people who are watching at the moment, we have had a runner workshop last year, and it is on the TENS YouTube channel. It is free, and it was a friend of mine, Sonia, who weaves rawanga, and so it is an introduction to harakiki weaving, and we've got other resources coming as well for TENS in that space too. So it is something that we're quite passionate about, especially with obviously weaving Te Ao Māori into our teaching and learning in the technology space. So check out that channel too, and I'm sure that Celia's got some other suggestions potentially.
Well, I have a couple. Like I have the dole is on my YouTube channel. I think that's Little Kiwi's Nature Plate. So, and I think there might be one or two other things on there. Have a wee scout around. Yeah, I prefer to do hands-on teaching in that space, but because some things are actually quite involved, and you actually have to have had a little bit of experience with weaving something more basic before you move on to something else like this manu. I do teach that, but it can be quite tricky to do. And even like this ball can look kind of simple because it's smaller, but actually it can also be a little bit tricky to start. So having an understanding of the patterns of over under is really useful.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, once again, I just want to say thank you. I mean, that was an amazing webinar, and you obviously a wealth of knowledge in this space and very passionate about using obviously nature to inspire and motivate our students. And I agree, get them out there. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Yeah, they can learn
Mm,
in lots of different environments. Why keep them in the classroom all the time? Get them out
yeah.
there and enjoying Aotearoa. We've got a wonderful country. Let's get them exploring with it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, you've got quite a few people saying Namihi Nui. So yeah, thank you for that. We're just going to finish off this session for today. And just so that people know, if you have time and have chance, if you could please fill out this feedback form for us at TENS. This helps and supports the TENS Council to come up with further resources, further events and PLD for teachers, and gives us a response on like what you enjoyed about today's presentation as well. So if you wouldn't mind either going to the bit.ly link there, or you can scan the QR code. Like we said at the beginning, this session has been recorded, and as soon as it is made available to you, it will be on the TENS YouTube channel. We've got lots and lots of different ideas on there on the TENS YouTube channel. I know you're talking about gardening on there. We've got a garden to table webinar. We've got lots of things to do with the environment as well. If you're enjoying that kind of approach to teaching and learning. So please just head on there and just watch whatever you want to, whenever you want to. And we will send a link out to those of you that have joined us today with the YouTube channel link once it's gone live too. Just to let you know about our next webinar. So next month, we've got a really big focus on sustainability at the moment as well in technology. And we have had Jeff Bentley in the past, who's done a few webinars for us in that space, but he's got a brand new project which he wants to share and explore with everybody, which is actually reusing those old mobile phones and getting them as a teaching resource in the classroom. So if you're interested to learn more about this and how to set this up in your school and what you can use it for, then please sign up and register for the next webinar, which is on Wednesday, the 27th of March. So once again, Celia, thank you very much for coming on with us today. It's been a pleasure having you here, and we've really enjoyed this session today. We'll just finish the session with our karakia. Kia amato katoa. Kua motu mato amato mahi me kupapa hoki. Arahina mato, ka mato mahi ano, kia whakatapua, mato ki ngā kupapa, me ngā mea e whakapapa. Manaakatia mai mato. Kia ora everybody, ka kite.